Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it so casually, like she'd said it before. No intimacy until you apologize. Her tone was flat, clinical, like a therapist delivering a boundary, not a wife speaking to her husband. The words didn't cut it first. They just echoed. The sound bounced around our IKEA apartment, hitting every surface I had once built for us. Every shelf, every frame, every chair we'd chosen together when things still felt like a team effort. I didn't respond. I just watched her pour herself a cup of Pete's coffee, the same morning ritual she used to share with me, back when she still laughed across the counter. That morning, she sipped it in silence, scrolling through her phone like I wasn't there. She looked peaceful, controlled. She thought withholding closeness gave her the upper hand. And that's when something inside me stopped reacting. For years, I'd argued, explained, tried to meet her halfway. Every time she froze me out, I thought I could thaw the room with logic, with patience. I'm a corporate attorney. I solve problems. But this wasn't a conflict. It was control. She wasn't angry. She was rehearsed. Like this was her way of testing how far she could bend me before I'd break. She liked to talk about emotional safety, about healing spaces. I used to admire that. I thought it made her sensitive. But lately, those words had turned into weapons, phrases she used to justify silence, distance, and punishment. That night, she didn't come to bed until late. I was still awake, staring at the ceiling, the faint glow of Hulu reflecting off the wall from her laptop. She didn't look at me when she climbed into bed. She just turned her back and adjusted her pillow. I didn't say goodnight. I didn't move closer. I let her fall asleep thinking she'd won. By morning, my side of the bed was untouched. The pillow perfectly smooth. My Volvo XC60 sat outside, engine quiet, suitcase already in the trunk. No message, no argument, no closure. Just the soft hum of an elevator door closing behind me as the city swallowed the sound. She'd said, "No touch tonight." I answered without words. I let her sleep alone. When I left that morning, I didn't take everything. Just the essentials, laptop, documents, a few shirts, my watch. The rest I left exactly as it was. Her books still on the nightstand, her cardigan draped across the chair, the faint smell of Pete's coffee still hanging in the kitchen. It wasn't escape. It was clarity. I drove without music. The city was just waking up, the streets damp from a night rain. I remember glancing in the rearview mirror and seeing our apartment building vanish behind me. Those sterile IKEA curtains she loved because they made everything look minimal and balanced. It hit me then. Balance had never been the problem. Control had. By the time she realized I was gone, I was already at a quiet motel near the coast, checking emails out of habit. There were 3 missed calls from her. Then one text. "Where are you?" I didn't respond. I let the silence do the explaining. The thing about silence, it doesn't accuse, it exposes. Within hours, she began filling the void. Messages came faster, shorter, more emotional. She wrote about how I'd overreacted, about how she needed space to process. That's when I understood. She didn't miss me. She missed the mirror I held up to her when she needed validation. That evening, I ordered food through DoorDash, ate alone, and watched nothing. Just sat there, phone face down, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. For the first time in years, there was peace in my head. Not joy, not relief, just quiet. The kind that doesn't ask for anything. Later, I checked LinkedIn out of instinct, work habit. My profile still active, full of achievements that suddenly meant nothing. Then I saw her name pop up under, "Viewed your profile." The irony wasn't lost on me. She used to mock how much time I spent there. Now she was searching for traces of me in a place built for resumes and facades. I didn't deactivate it then. I just changed one line in the bio, taking a step back to focus on what matters. It wasn't for her. It was for me. By midnight, she'd sent another message. "You can't just disappear." But that's the thing about disappearing. You can, if you've already been invisible for a long time. 2 days passed before she stopped asking where I was and started asking why. That shift told me everything. It wasn't worry, it was control slipping through her hands. She wasn't used to silence lasting this long. Normally, I'd cave first, send a message, offer peace in exchange for warmth. This time, I let her sit in her own echo. I stayed at that motel by the coast, answering work emails, pretending everything was fine. My Volvo sat outside, a quiet witness to my absence. The ocean was close enough that I could hear it at night, steady and detached, like it understood the rhythm of distance. Each morning, I'd walk past a cafe that served Pete's coffee, the same brand she used to brew at home. I'd order it black and drink it slowly, knowing she was probably at that same kitchen counter, sipping hers alone now. By the third morning, her tone had shifted again. Messages turned softer, more personal. "We need to talk. I didn't mean to push you away." But I didn't trust the words. They sounded rehearsed, the same vocabulary she used in her psychology lectures about restoring connection. I'd heard those phrases before, in her classroom, in therapy podcasts she quoted during arguments, in her colleague's voice, the therapist she swore was just a friend. That man's name had been floating around our home for months. Eric said emotional distance is a defense mechanism. Eric thinks you struggle with vulnerability. At first, I laughed it off. But over time, his words began replacing mine. I realized she wasn't sharing her pain with me anymore. She was outsourcing it to someone who made her feel morally superior for doing so. It wasn't physical betrayal, but it was worse. She'd built intimacy with someone else, while freezing me out in our own bed. That night, I deactivated my LinkedIn profile completely. Not out of anger, but finality. I didn't want to be visible anywhere she could find me. Back in the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the blank wall. No photos, no books, no proof of me. Just space. And for the first time, space felt safer than love. On the fourth night, she called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity outweighed peace. Her voice was calm at first, the same tone she used with her students when she wanted to appear reasonable. "You just left," she said. "That's not how adults solve things." I didn't respond. The silence stretched so long she finally whispered, "You're scaring me." That's when I realized she wasn't scared of losing me. She was scared of losing control of the version of me she'd built. After the call, I turned off my phone and placed it face down on the motel table. I opened my laptop, checked work one last time, and closed it too. For years I had lived by structure, deadlines, cases, logic. But in that moment, I didn't want to build or fix anything. I just wanted quiet. Back at home, she began reaching out through other people. A mutual friend sent me a message on LinkedIn before I shut it down. He said she was worried and just wanted clarity. Clarity was the one thing I'd given her by leaving. I imagined her apartment exactly as I'd left it, spotless, organized, every IKEA item in its right place. She'd probably sat at our small kitchen table with her laptop open to Hulu, pretending to watch something while checking her phone every minute. Maybe she called Eric, the therapist colleague, to talk about how I avoided emotional labor. Maybe he told her to hold her boundaries. It sounded clinical, detached, safe. I could almost hear his voice echoing through the walls I once paid for. Meanwhile, I started to feel something I hadn't in years, neutral. Not angry, not sad, just still. That stillness became addictive. I drove my Volvo up the coast that night. No destination, no playlist. Just the sound of the tires cutting through wet asphalt and the ocean wind pressing against the windows. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look broken. I looked free. She wanted me to apologize so she could decide when I was forgiven. Instead, I gave her what she never expected, absence she couldn't control. By the fifth day, she wasn't just calling, she was performing. Posts appeared on her social media, all carefully curated. A picture of a sunset captioned, "Healing is hard but necessary." A quote from her colleague Eric about letting go of emotional immaturity. I recognized the tactic. She wasn't reaching out to me anymore. She was reaching for an audience. Controlled by perception, that was always her strength. But silence has a way of turning the spotlight the other way. People began noticing that I'd vanished. Mutual friends stopped tagging me in photos. My law firm handled my absence quietly, saying I was taking time off. It was exactly what I wanted. For once, my life wasn't a reaction to hers. That night, I opened my laptop to check something for work and saw an email from her, subject line, "Closure." Inside was a long, emotionally scripted message about boundaries and emotional growth. But between the lines, it was clear she was unraveling. She wrote that she never expected me to leave, that she just needed space. I read it twice, then closed the screen. I didn't need to reply. My absence had already become the answer. Outside, the rain started again, steady and relentless. I watched the drops slide down the motel window, tracing thin lines like the conversations we'd stopped having years ago. I thought about how every argument had ended with the same phrase. If you can't understand my feelings, then you don't deserve my closeness. Back then, I believed her. I thought love meant earning peace. But peace isn't earned, it's chosen. And for the first time, I was choosing mine. I ordered dinner through DoorDash, left it untouched on the table. My appetite had shifted from food to freedom. Across the room, my packed suitcase sat ready, just in case I wanted to keep driving. Maybe further north, maybe nowhere specific. When I finally turned off the lights, I realized something simple but sharp. She had used intimacy like currency, trading affection for compliance. But I was done being the one who paid the emotional bill. She wanted control through silence. I gave her silence with distance. A week later, her control began to crumble publicly. It started small. Someone from her psychology department posted a photo of their staff brunch. She was there, sitting beside Eric, smiling for the camera, pretending nothing had changed. But I knew that look. The one where her smile was just a disguise for panic. The kind she wore when the narrative started slipping away from her. I didn't reach out. I didn't comment. I didn't exist. That was my move. And it worked better than confrontation ever could. By midweek, messages from mutual friends began trickling in. Some curious, some cautious. One of them wrote, "She's been different lately. Did something happen?" I didn't answer. Silence had become my only language, and for the first time, it was the loudest thing in the room. While she crafted her version of events online, her real life began to show cracks. Her classes were quieter. Her students whispered. Her colleagues noticed she kept glancing at her phone between lectures. That's how control decays, not with scandal, but with uncertainty. Meanwhile, I kept my world small. Days filled with simplicity, drives along the coast, black coffee in the mornings, the sound of waves instead of accusations. I'd stopped checking social media entirely. The only reminder of her that lingered was the IKEA watch I'd left on the pillow back home, ticking away on an empty bed. Time moving forward without her. I heard through a friend that she started attending more of Eric's workshops. The ones about healing after abandonment. The irony almost made me laugh. She turned my silence into her next self-improvement project. But deep down, I knew it wasn't growth. It was desperation disguised as progress. That night, I logged into my work account to tie up loose ends. My inbox was quiet. No chaos, no drama. Just structure. Something predictable again. I closed the laptop and leaned back, realizing how peace doesn't announce itself. It just replaces noise 1 second at a time. She thought she could teach me about emotional distance. Instead, I mastered it. And this time, she wasn't the therapist. She was the patient, waiting for a reply that would never come. By the second week, her tone had changed completely. The long, composed emails stopped. Now it was short messages sent late at night. "Are you okay? Can we just talk? You're being cruel." Each one felt like a signal flare fired into the dark, desperate for an answer that wasn't coming. I didn't block her. I just let every message sit unread. Silence wasn't revenge, it was reflection. I started renting a small place a few towns away. Nothing special. A single room with a desk, a bed, and a view of the ocean. The kind of quiet space where you could finally hear yourself think. Every morning, I made my own coffee and watched the waves roll in. No Pete's logo, no matching mugs, no empty chair across the table. Just stillness and caffeine. From what I heard, she began losing focus at work. Her lectures were shorter. She canceled one of her podcast recordings with Eric. Someone mentioned she'd been distant, that she seemed to be living inside her phone, waiting for something. I wondered if she realized that silence, when you're not prepared for it, can be the loudest teacher. Sometimes I'd picture her walking through the apartment we'd built together, every piece of IKEA furniture perfectly in place, but somehow hollow. The bed made. The dishes stacked. The clock on the wall still ticking beside that empty spot where my watch once rested. Time didn't stop for her. It just started counting differently. There was a strange satisfaction in knowing that my absence had done what years of arguments never could. It forced truth to surface. She wasn't angry anymore. She was exposed. Every tactic, every emotional test, every withheld touch had been about control. But now, Control had turned into isolation. I didn't hate her. That would have meant she still had a hold on me. Instead, I felt something closer to indifference. A calm so deep, it almost felt sacred. She'd spent months teaching me about emotional detachment. I just learned faster than she expected. And now she was the one sitting in silence, wondering if I'd ever come back. 3 weeks passed before she finally stopped pretending everything was fine. I didn't need to see it to know. People start unraveling in patterns you can almost predict. It begins with control, then performance, and finally, silence. Hers came slower than mine, but it came. One night, I checked my old email for the first time in days. There was a message from her, shorter than the rest. No lectures, no apologies, no demands. Just 6 words. You're gone, but I still hear you. For a moment, I almost felt it, a flicker of something familiar. But then I realized she wasn't hearing me. She was hearing the absence I'd left behind, the reflection of her own choices echoing through a quiet room. I didn't reply. I'd already learned that every word I gave her became a new tool in her game of power and guilt. So I gave her nothing. That weekend, I drove back into the city. Not to see her, just to close a chapter. I parked the Volvo outside our old building and sat there for a while, watching the light in the living room window. It was on but dim, the curtains still drawn. The place looked like a museum of what used to be. I didn't go inside, but I imagined it easily. The clean IKEA lines, the untouched kitchen counter, the empty space beside her mug. Maybe she was sitting there, scrolling through Hulu, pretending to focus on a show while her mind wandered toward the door I'd walked out of. Maybe she was realizing that silence doesn't just fill a room. It expands until it swallows everything that depended on noise to survive. Before driving away, I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look like the man she once accused of being cold. I looked steady, quiet, unshaken. On the way back, I stopped at a gas station, refilled the tank, and sat there for a moment longer. The night air was heavy but still, and for the first time, I understood what peace really costs. Everything you once thought you couldn't live without. She wanted me to apologize. Instead, I disappeared so completely that apology became meaningless. By the 4th week, the silence had done what I never could. It stripped everything bare. I didn't need to confront her, expose her, or explain myself. Reality had already done it. A mutual colleague from her department called me, not to gossip, but to check if I was okay. He mentioned her name softly, said she'd been different lately. That she'd stopped joining team lunches, stopped mentioning Eric's podcast, stopped pretending she had it all under control. I said I was fine, and I was. Each morning had its rhythm now. Coffee, ocean, quiet work, and peace. No more waiting for her moods to dictate my day. No more decoding every pause in her voice. I had built a life where stillness wasn't punishment. It was reward. But even in peace, memory has its habits. Sometimes, I catch myself thinking about the small details, the way she used to hum while cleaning, or how she'd curl her hair before a lecture. It wasn't nostalgia. It was clarity. I could finally remember her without trying to fix her. Then, one evening, a delivery came to my new address. No name, no return label. Inside was a small box. My old watch. The one I'd left on her pillow. Nothing else. Just that piece of time, returned to me like a confession. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like recognition. She had finally understood that what she lost wasn't a man. It was access. I set the watch on the windowsill and left it there. It still ticked, steady and precise, a rhythm that didn't depend on anyone's approval. Outside, the sun was setting over the ocean, the sky fading into deep blue silence. In that moment, I realized how distance can turn love into perspective. You start seeing not what was lost, but what was learned. She once told me, "You hurt my feelings, no touch tonight." Now she was learning the real cost of emotional games. Because the touch she withheld had become the silence she couldn't escape. And I wasn't coming back to break it for her. It was a month to the day when I finally saw her again. Not in person, not by plan, just a coincidence. I was in the city for a meeting, walking past a small cafe, when I saw her through the window. She was alone, no laptop, no phone in hand, just staring at her untouched cup of Pete's coffee. Her posture said everything her words never could. Shoulders slightly hunched, eyes somewhere far away, the kind of stillness that doesn't come from peace, it comes from loss. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and chose not to move. I didn't pause long enough to find out. I kept walking. The doorbell chimed faintly behind me, but I didn't turn around. For once, I didn't need to. I'd already written my ending. As I reached the corner, I remembered our last night together, the way she'd rolled away from me in bed and said she needed emotional safety. Back then, I thought distance was punishment. Now I understood it was a gift. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone who confuses control with love is to leave them with their own reflection. Back at my apartment, I set my watch on the desk beside my laptop. It was still ticking, a perfect loop of time, measured and calm, untouched by chaos. I opened my inbox and saw one last message from her. No greeting, no plea, just a single sentence. I never thought you'd actually leave. I didn't reply. Instead, I closed my laptop, stood by the window, and watched the ocean breathe in silence. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even proud. I was just free. She used to believe withholding closeness gave her power. But power built on fear always collapses. Now she sits in the silence she once created, and I live in the peace I built from it. If she ever wonders where I went, the answer is simple. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. Been through it. When they crossed a line, and you made sure they felt it.